I've saved £20,000 in the last year alone by cutting out these 5 middle class habits. Once you've done that, you'll be keeping 20 to 40% more of your monthly income, having that money to spend on stuff you love or invest. So let's dive straight in. So the first habit is being embarrassed to ask for more. I think it's really easy to accept that your income is basically set by your employer and there's nothing you can do about it. Then you add on top of that the fact that not only do you perhaps undervalue yourself, but also the thought of asking your boss for more money, most people, myself included, find incredibly awkward and uncomfortable. But the reality is that most people either can negotiate their pay with their current employer. So Beth, for example, is a freelancer and she effectively has to ask for what she wants to be paid every time she gets a new job every 3 to 6 months. Or for me, my pay is very fixed, but there is some scope for my bonus to change depending on how hard I've worked and how well I've done in my job. And I think if you do have that conversation, the most important things are to remain humble, to really know the value that you bring and be able to present that case when having this discussion, generally know the value of other people in the marketplace, and finally really go into it with the idea of I like where I'm working and I really want to stay working with you, but ultimately I feel like I'm undervalued here. This also applies where you're buying stuff. Always bear in mind, these are commercial negotiations. You are entitled to try and get a good deal for yourself, just as that person is trying to get a good deal from you. So always be open about asking for more, at least to start with, and hopefully you meet somewhere in the middle. Fundamentally, get used to having negotiations for small things first, like your phone bill, and get in the practice of negotiating and build up to doing that with bigger things. And then hopefully ultimately getting to a stage where you feel more comfortable to have that conversation with your employer about your earnings. The second habit is accruing monthly outgoings. As most people's income increases, their spending increases proportionately. And this is something Morgan Housel focuses on in his book, The Psychology of Money. Essentially, as you earn more, what you consider to be important or material expenditure obviously changes. What keeps most people in the rat race for the entirety of their lives is not that their income never increases, it's that as it increases, they pay less and less attention to their monthly spending. When you add all of that overspending up, you're just not increasing your net worth because your income is being matched by equivalent spending. Now, the only way to fix this is to review your spending, particularly your monthly recurring spending. And I recently made a video on the entire system that I use to track my finances. And I found that I was massively overpaying on a number of recurring monthly expenses. So step one, pause this video and book in half a day at a weekend to review your spending. Step two is then to list all of your monthly or yearly recurring bills. List out exactly what you're spending on them each and every month. Step three is then to cancel unwanted subscriptions. So I found that there are a bunch of apps I was paying for but don't really use anymore. Also, that Beth and I have way too many TV subscriptions, so we cancelled a couple. One of my best mates has actually implemented a cool strategy that I think works really nicely, where he just pays for one TV subscription at a time. We'll binge watch everything that service has to offer that's really good, and we'll then move on every, say, 3 months to another service. And then step four is to change your supplier. So I moved my iPhone from a £90 a month contract onto a $7.99 contract. I then also moved our Wi-Fi. I was paying £49 a month just for Wi-Fi, and I moved that over to a Sky package that comes with Netflix, with TV and Wi-Fi, all for £44 a month. Beth then also changed our energy supplier. So in total, that brings monthly savings to around £158 a month, which is £1,896 a year saved. All right, the third habit is ignoring their daily spending. Now, most people know that Einstein said that compounding is the eighth wonder of the world, and therefore if you put money away when you're young, it compounds over time with compound interest to lead to a relatively large sum when you're older, which is all amazing. But I think people often ignore the impact of compounding in a negative sense, that if you ignore small amounts spent every single day, those add up to actually very large amounts over time. So again, to see this, you've got to review your spending in detail. But for example, commuting. In the UK, commuting is extremely expensive. If you live outside of London, you could easily be spending £30 to up to £50 a day to commute into the city. So let's say you spend £30 a day 3 times a week to get into the office over 52 weeks of the year. You're spending about £5,000. Whereas I spend £3 a day, so about £500, saving £4,500 a year over you. The important thing here is that whenever you're considering where you're going to live, you should also factor in commuting costs. The other two big expenses every day are obviously eating, meals. So when I'm at the office, I limit myself to £10 a day on lunch. I can get a perfectly good lunch that's really nice for that amount. But actually in London, it's pretty common for people to spend, say, £10 to £15 a day every day on their lunch. Over the course course of about a 200-day working year, I'm basically saving about £1,000 more than they are. And I do this just by being a little bit more savvy with what I'm buying. And the other one is coffees. Now, Beth and I both absolutely love coffee, but when you combine our potential coffee spending, let's say the average coffee in London costs £4.50. This is a pretty extreme example. Let's say we're having 2 a day each, and we're doing that 365 days of the year. That would mean in a year, Beth and I would be spending £6,570 on coffee alone. But instead, I got a really nice bean to cup coffee machine that I absolutely love. I make myself a little travel mug every morning and then have a perhaps second coffee at work using the free work coffee machine. I'm not saying cut out the things you like spending money on. I'm just saying be a bit more savvy about those daily spending items, because when you add all of those up, we could be talking £5,000 to £10,000 a year. Fourth habit is paying too much tax. Now, we all have to pay it. For most people, it is probably their biggest single expense in life. The very richest people are doing a very good job of minimizing, but the rest of us seem not to think too much about it. Now, I'm going to assume that you earn your monthly income, which means that you have to pay income tax and, in the UK, national insurance, and those are pretty unavoidable costs. But there is one thing that you absolutely can control, and that is your use of tax-efficient investment structures. So look them up, Google it, and figure out how you can do it. In the UK, you can make contributions to a pension up to £60,000 a year, and effectively that means that your salary is decreased by the amount you contribute, meaning that you pay less income tax. On top of that, workplace pension schemes have some kind of employer matching. Generally, your employer matching up to, say, 8% of the amount you put in. So you put in 8%, and your employer puts in 8%, giving you 16% invested into your pension, as well as the tax savings. So this is something you absolutely must be doing. And if you're someone who does their own tax return or changes jobs frequently, like Beth does, it's actually really difficult to have a new pension with every employer. You might be able to start your own SIP, self-invested personal pension, in the UK. The next tax efficient thing you can do in terms of investments is to open an ISA in the UK, or Roth IRA is probably the closest to that in the US, and they'll again be similar structures elsewhere. Essentially, what these investment accounts mean is that you can put money in post-tax, and then you invest a small amount of that into an ISA, either a cash ISA or into a stocks and shares ISA. And the benefit of both of these is that the amount of interest you are paid, or the increase in the value of your investments, is completely tax-free. All right, let's say, for example, I'm a UK investor, and over time, those investments go up in value until I sell them and I make £10,000. In the UK, as at November 2024, that will be charged capital gains tax unless I have it in an ISA. That will mean that, ignoring the small amount of personal allowance you have for capital gains, the amount of tax I have to pay is 24% of the £10,000 gain. If I have that money instead in an ISA, I pay no tax at all. And probably the main benefit of cutting out these middle class habits is that you only grow wealth by putting money away each month into an investment account, as we just discussed. A tax-free investment account is absolutely the best vehicle to use, and I do that using Invest Engine. Their ISA is absolutely unbelievably easy to set up and use, and it's the account that I personally use. Now, Invest Engine are today's sponsor, but I can honestly say that I've used a bunch of different investing platforms, and the one thing that really makes Invest Engine stand out for me is how easy it is to automate your monthly investments. Before I started using Invest Engine, I used to have to manually transfer money from my account into my investment account. I often forgot around my busy life and would end up not investing as much as I want to. But now, every time I get paid, the first thing that happens is that money automatically comes out of my account, goes into my investment account, and Invest Engine then invests that for me into different funds based on the allocations that I've set within the app. One of the other most important factors when you're looking at different investing platforms is the fee structure, and Invest Engine is free to sign up to use. You can open a tax-efficient ISA in the UK completely free. You can build your own portfolio, again, completely commission-free, or you can leave it to one of their experts for a relatively low fee of 0.25% at the time of making this video. The sign-up process is really easy and intuitive, and then connecting your bank account and starting the automatic deposits on the day you get paid is also very straightforward. Once you're set up, Invest Engine then has fractional investing, meaning you can invest as little as £1 into an ETF. The dashboard analytics and insights that you get from the app are all really easy to follow and use. I am overall a huge Invest Engine fan. As I say, I use them for my own ISA and also my own business investments. So yeah, start using the extra money you're going to have after you've beaten the middle class habits we're talking about in this video by investing tax efficiently in an Invest Engine ISA. Plus, when you get an Invest Engine, you'll get a welcome bonus of up to £50 when you use the link in the description. All right, and the fifth habit that people get wrong is cutting back on the stuff you love. And the reason this is so important is that as you become more diligent with your finances, you've committed to building your wealth and cutting out these bad money habits. If you take it too far and cut out the things that really matter most to you and you really value, you'll end up making yourself miserable, resenting the process of saving money and going back to the bad money habits of old you. So instead of that, I recommend making a list of the things that matter most to you and prioritizing your spending on those things. So for me, the three biggest priority items I have, and number one is living in a nice place, close to a park, and having a short commute. So when Beth and I were choosing where we wanted to live, we chose based on those three criteria, but we also did so financially responsibly. So we earn between the two of us post-tax about £130,000 a year. I appreciate that is a lot, but we also have to live in London because of our jobs. In general, people can afford to spend about 40% of their monthly earnings on rent. So that for us would have been about £4,300 a month. Where we live, it's also way cheaper than loads of other areas of London that would have also met those criteria. And we specifically chose not to push our budget, spending just £1,950 a month rather than splurging. Another thing that really matters to me is travel, and I prioritize spending on that. I spend maybe £10,000 a year on travel, and Beth spends perhaps £5,000. And we do that because we love it, and we spend 2 weeks of the year on an amazing couple of trips, the two of us, and then maybe a handful of shorter trips throughout the year. One thing I would say on travel spending is beware the law of diminishing returns. Essentially, the more you spend, things get incrementally nicer, but they start to get less and less nicer at massively more expense. So we generally go for very premium places, but not like the absolute premium where you can spend £20,000 on 4 nights somewhere. And finally, coffee. But as I already said, I don't buy coffee every day. Instead, I got a coffee machine that's really nice as a wedding present, got people to contribute to that rather than buying us loads of random stuff that we didn't want. Again, a financially responsible way of approaching wedding presents, I think. And obviously, people were very generous. That's amazing. I got the coffee machine effectively for free. And then on top of that, I buy relatively expensive coffee beans that make absolutely delicious coffee. I'm absolutely not cutting back on the coffee experience that really matters to me, but I'm also not spending a small fortune every day on coffee. So yeah, if you distill wealth into two basic components, one is how much do you earn, and you can maximize that by not undervaluing yourself and by making sure you're maximizing your earnings. On the flip side is spending, and you can minimize your spending on tax. You can also review your monthly and daily spending, make sure that you're not spending tons of money on small things each day that add up over time. Doing those 4 things will then mean that you have more money available to you to invest in growing your wealth for the future through a tax efficient structure. And again, I really cannot recommend opening an ISA using Invest Engine highly enough. And finally, do all of that stuff while not cutting back on the stuff you love. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and then drop a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I always read every single one of the comments. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to speaking again very, very soon.